You're muted, Mike. Sorry.
I'm not hearing Mike. Stephen, just in case anybody else is.
Oh yeah. Can you hear us, Mike? It's okay. 1 second. If sometimes the controls go to the top of the screen with Zoom, so if you go to the top of the screen where you're sharing, it'll sometimes be up there for unmuting yourself.
Yeah, I think that sorted it. It kind of disappeared to the top of the screen, to the other screen.
That's perfect. Just to make you aware, Mike, we're only seeing we're not seeing the full presentation mode.
Okay, I'll reshare the screen then.
And for all the attendees as well, if you have any questions for the speakers today, could you please use the chat function, and we'll get to them at the Q&A section towards the end of today's event. Thank you.
Are you seeing the full screen now?
Yeah, seeing full screen.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm just trying to get used to Zoom, not my usual platform. Hello and welcome. There's quite a bit of content in some of the slides that I'm going to show. So I'm not going to go through it line by line, but I understand that this will be shared with you later. So you can go back and look at more of the detail or ask any questions during the questions and answers session. My name is Mike O'Rourke. I'm with Electric Ireland Superhomes. I've been with Superhomes for about 6 years now. I worked here as a retrofit engineer for a considerable duration of that time. And for the last year, I've been a head of contracting and safety. I'm going to run through how one-stop shops in general and how we in Electric Ireland Superhomes as a one-stop shop work with contractors. So there's a couple of different ways that we do that depending on the project type, but also the contractor type. So we have approved contractors that work on the standard whole house energy retrofit projects with us. We also have contractors that work on a heat pump plus type project, and I'll speak more about both of those. And then we have a third category called our consultancy type projects, and I'll explain as we go on what is involved there. But I think it's important first for those listening who aren't aware of the detail or what the one-stop shop scheme is and where it came from. And that basically, I guess, I suppose to a large extent, the one-stop shop scheme, we believe, has been fairly heavily modeled on the way that we in Superhomes have been doing things for quite a long time. So SEAI have taken some of the great elements of the way we've been doing things, and they've added in obviously a lot of additional parts to the overall scheme as well, and to make it, I suppose, more broadly applicable. So Superhomes has been operating and was developed as part of Tipperary Energy Agency over 7 years ago at this stage. In the last year and a half, we went into a joint venture with DASBE Electric Ireland to give us the ability to significantly scale up the number of homes that we're retrofitting. And this is all part of trying to contribute to the very ambitious targets that the government has to retrofit 500,000 houses by 2030. Our plan is to do a chunk of that, a proportion of that. We're aiming at the moment to do 35,000 retrofits over the next, well, by 2030, 8 to 9 years remaining. So it's a pretty ambitious plan. So in 2021, we did over 100 houses. And to get to that 35,000 over the 10-year period, this is what the scale up looks like. So you can see that, you know, by 2026, we plan to be doing 3,500 retrofits per year. Considerable consideration in doing that is our partnerships with our contractors, and that's where you come into it. So we've got a program of finding and selecting contractors and helping those contractors to develop by partnering with us and helping them to grow with us. So to give you an idea, when we're talking about a whole house energy retrofit, it's a multifaceted approach. So it's taking a whole house approach, taking a look at the fabric of it. So the various different elements, the wall insulation, roof insulation, sometimes floor insulation, windows, doors, addressing air tightness where necessary, and then looking at the mechanical and electrical systems that go into it. So that's a central heating system based on a heat pump. We'll usually have a mechanical ventilation system in our homes, though it's not the case with all one-stop shops. And solar photovoltaics might sometimes be part of that package, but we tend to address the fabric first and then the heating system. And the solar photovoltaic is sometimes necessary to hit the one-stop shop target, and sometimes it's just the choice by the customer. So for the most part, the customers that come to us would be looking at a combination of these measures. So we look at each house individually, case-by-case basis, and we assess, well, what's the most sensible way of improving the energy efficiency of that home? There is a certain cohort of houses due to either year of build or the fact that the homeowners may have already addressed a number of the fabric measures that makes a house more suitable or closer to being ready to install a heat pump in it. So they'll either be homes that the customer has already done a lot, or they might be homes built from 2003 onwards, where the building regulations would have been already driving them towards improving the fabric of the building. We call those kind of homes a heat pump plus type project. So the reason being that most of the fabric is already there. So the measures we might have to do in a home like that would be maybe some minor fabric measures such as cavity wall insulation or attic insulation, and that and a couple of other minor measures might make that house then ready for a heat pump. So they tend to be smaller, quicker turnaround type projects, and obviously lower cost than a whole house deep energy retrofit for the customer. On the one-stop shop scheme, FEAI has set certain criteria in order to make that house eligible for the grants. And there's quite a bit of detail in it, but the headline items really are that the house has to have been built pre-2011. There are still single measure grants available for homes that are built post-2011. So there's still grants available, but through the one-stop shop scheme with the heat pump, the house has to have been built pre-2011. They also want to try to pick not the best of the houses and retrofit them. They want to pick houses below a certain level and give them a significant upgrade. So for a house to be eligible, it has to have a BER rating of B3 or lower to qualify. Some of you who may have been involved in the single measure grant schemes in Ireland will be familiar with the FEAI's requirement on the HLI, or the heat loss indicator, to get a house suitable for a heat pump. So that's a requirement under this scheme as well. There must also be an improvement in the BER of at least 100 kilowatt hours per meter squared. So it's not sufficient, for example, to take a B3 house and just do minor upgrades that will result in a small uplift, but a minimum 100 kilowatt hour uplift. So that just forces the customer to do more and make a significant improvement in their home. The end result has to be that the house will have a BER rating of a B2 or better. Although we find that by the time we've done the fabric improvements to get the heat loss indicator right and put in a heat pump, that the vast majority of our homes end up as A-rated. So 2021, I think the figure is about 84% of the homes that we retrofitted ended up as A-rated. The measures that can be involved, and this is where these are the measures that the contractors would be delivering to a one-stop shop or on a one-stop shop program for the customer, involve a lot of the fabric measures, which can include a combination of wall insulation, roof insulation, floors, windows, doors. Air tightness and ventilation are optional on the one-stop shop scheme, provided the overall energy targets are achieved. But we in Superhomes strongly recommend these, because you can put all the insulation you want onto a house, but if the house is full of holes, it's still not going to retain that heat. All of our houses also involve the installation of a heat pump. That's usually an air-to-water heat pump. Other heat pumps are possible, but the vast majority of ours end up with a heat pump, an air-to-water heat pump. And that will usually mean some upgrades or improvements to the heat distribution system, such as radiators in the house. And as I mentioned earlier on, solar PV is sometimes an optional measure. The measures that I've highlighted in blue there with the asterisks against them, those are measures for which the grant supports are only available through the one-stop shop scheme. The other ones in black, you can get single measure grants towards those, but as a maximum, we can potentially, on a house, depending on the measures that are being carried out, get close to double the grant through the one-stop shop model. So that's up to about 17,100 extra that is only available for customers who go through the one-stop shop. So that makes it a lot more achievable and a lot more attractive for the customer to take part in the scheme. I won't go through all of these, but it'll give you an idea of the measures. So on this scheme, compared to other SEAI schemes or previous SEAI schemes, the grant amounts are based on a measure by measure basis. So it's not a percentage. It's previous schemes might have been up to a maximum of 35% or up to a maximum of 50% of the cost of a measure, where on this they've decided, right, external wall insulation for a particular house type, whether that's an apartment, mid-terrace, detached house, is X. So for example, external wall insulation on a detached house, there is €8,000 of a grant towards those costs. So the benefits to a contractor getting involved in this scheme through a one-stop shop are the significantly increased grant level. So that effectively increases the customer's budget for doing the retrofit works, which means they have more money to spend through the contractor and one-stop shop in order to achieve the energy upgrades. We have funding certainty. There's 8 billion has been allocated between now and 2030 to retrofit homes in Ireland. I would suspect that funding will be extended beyond 2030, but officially it's 8 billion up to 2030. So there is an assurance of, I suppose, continuity of the support for the industry to retrofit homes. Another significant benefit or improvement on this scheme compared to previous schemes is that this scheme is available year-round. Previous schemes were very stop-start. You wouldn't have grant approval until May, and you had to finish the projects by October, and then you had a gap where there was no new grants or funding available, which meant that the work tended to dry up, or the grant-related work tended to dry up for contractors for a period of time. With this new scheme, it's a rolling grant scheme. We can put in a grant application at any stage of the year, and we can draw down the grant at any stage of the year. So that level of continuity makes it a lot easier for contractors to plan their own growth and plan their own capacity and to continue to grow as the schemes grow. I'd argue as well that by putting a proportion or all of your work focused on the energy retrofit market supported by these grants, that your business would be more resilient to downturns in the construction industry, which anybody who's been in the construction industry here in Ireland has seen that, has been through the worst of that. But with 8 billion of support guaranteed towards this scheme, even when new build work may slow down as a result of constraints in the economy, it would be expected that the retrofit industry will be that bit more resilient as a result of these grant supports. There's also been obviously a lot of marketing by SEAI, and there's constantly a lot of discussion in the media about improving energy efficiency, about reducing carbon emissions, about reducing home energy running costs. And that all helps drive the interest from the customers. So reasons why a contractor can benefit from partnering with a one-stop shop. Number one, it gives you access to higher grants that your customers may not otherwise be able to benefit from. Because we as the one-stop shop would be cash flowing the grant amount, it means that you're not in a situation where a customer is telling you, oh, I can't make the last payment to you until I get my grant back from SEAI. We will be cash flowing that grant amount, and it'll be down to us to retrieve that money from SEAI at the end of the project. But provided you as a contractor have completed your work, you will get paid regardless of whether SEAI have, whether the process in getting the grants back through SEAI slowed things down. We as the one-stop shop will deal with SEAI. So this is, it has been an issue in the past where particularly smaller contractors who don't have as much office resources find it difficult in dealing with SEAI, getting questions answered, getting information, moving things along, and it can be a complex process. So one of the things that we'll do is we will do that dealing with SEAI on behalf of both the customer, but also on behalf of the contractor involved in the project and make that easier. We also deal with the customer payments. So I've had a number of our contractors or newer contractors that have come to us who've said, well, one thing that interests them about working with us as a one-stop shop on these schemes is that they don't have to worry about being the one to chase the homeowner for payments when due, that basically they can let us do that. We also would obviously have a fairly strong marketing approach, sales and marketing approach. So we're driving the business interest, we're finding the customers, and that will result in a reduced cost for contractors who might otherwise have to do their own sales and marketing to go on and find the suitable customers. There's also the benefit of an association with a strong brand. There are now 12 registered one-stop shops on the scheme. Many of them have, like ourselves, have a strong brand and strong brand awareness, which gives customers confidence in coming to us to get their house retrofitted versus maybe going to a smaller contractor that they don't know a lot about. So that confidence, it does help to make that sale. It helps convince the customer that they're going the right route, and having the strength of a big company behind the organization results in a benefit. So being able to say that you're partnered with, for example, Electric Ireland Superhomes will give your customers confidence to move ahead on a project. We also have a fairly strong in-house expertise. We have a number of experienced retrofit engineers. So as will arise on many projects, there can be questions about how to address a certain situation, what is required both technically, but also in terms of the SCAI grant schemes. So having good access to that advice and information from the one-stop shop will make your life as a contractor a lot easier. And working with the one-stop shop give you that competitive advantage because you have that expertise behind you. You have improved quality control insofar as, so we will be, I suppose, keeping an eye on projects, making sure that things are done in accordance with the grant scheme requirements. And but we do so in a, I suppose, an advisory role to the contractor so that you're learning as you go. We have to date a 100% success rate in achieving the grants for our customers. Again, that adds to the confidence. We have a very high SCAI inspection pass rate. Largely that's due to the advice that our engineers are in a position to give to our contractors. We do site inspections, and as with most, if not all, SCAI grant schemes, there are SCAI inspections. However, we do pre-inspections. Before it gets to that stage, we will already have checked over the project and highlighted any issues that we believe need to be addressed to ensure that when it comes to the SCAI inspection, that there's little chance of a fail or a problem with it. To date, on the one-stop shop scheme, which only started this year, but so far we have a 100% pass rate on all inspections by SCAI. Another strong advantage to partnering with the one-stop shop is that we will advocate on behalf of the contractor if there are any issues arising with inspections or with SCAI or with any of the paperwork or documentation, which we assist. We do most of the paperwork and documentation processing, provided obviously that the contractor has told us what is installed, then we can gather the relevant information to make sure that we satisfy all of the grant scheme requirements. So in short, what we try to do as best we can, or are continuing to improve on it, is take that pain or that trouble of dealing with quite a complex program and a complex system. We try to take that responsibility away from the contractor so that the contractor can get on with doing what they do well, and that is doing the actual installs and retrofits on the site. How am I doing on time there so far?
You're
Stephen?
good, yeah. You've
Okay.
10 minutes left.
Okay, good. Another benefit of working with us as a one-stop shop, that we operate a two-way referral system. So the vast majority of projects are coming to us. We're already pre-qualifying those projects. We're doing the surveys, the design, the specification, and bringing that project then to the contractor to get the project priced and then move on towards delivery. But another benefit is that most contractors, through word of mouth or local customers, people local to your business, will come directly to you. But to be able to avail of the one-stop shop grants, those customers will have to operate through a one-stop shop like ourselves. So the way that we work with our approved contractors is that if you get those direct inquiries and it looks like a house that may be suitable for the one-stop shop scheme and a project that you're interested in taking on, you can refer that through us, and that project will come back to you to deliver the works. But we can deal with the customer from the point of view of applying for the grant, putting the right quality controls in measure, making sure that the project is designed such that when delivered, will achieve those grants for the customer. So for our larger approved contractors, we'll actually provide a dedicated referral link so that you can just point a customer to this link through a text message or a WhatsApp message or an email. And when they apply to us through that link, we will know that that referral has come from you and that's your customer. And as a result, that they will get accelerated and treated. And we know that you're the contractor who will be pricing that work for them. So we operate a few different models or a few different ways that we work with the customers, which means a few different ways that we work with the contractors. So as I said, that your standard project is whole house energy upgrade, which will have a combination of multiple energy retrofit measures. Typically, these are projects where the customers come to us and we bring these projects to you. These tend to be, though not exclusively, these projects tend to be installed by a fabric or building type contractor, because there might be a significant amount of building type work, such as the insulation works, windows and doors, air tightness measures, etc. Costs vary depending on house type and the number of measures and such, but just a rough guide, these projects would be in the 40 to 80,000 euro value, and duration on site for delivery of such projects would be most of them between 3 and 8 weeks turnaround time. We then also have the Heat Pump Plus type projects. So these are like a retrofit light where most of the fabric work is already done or is already up to a high standard. Generally, these will be led by a heat pump contractor because typically 75% or so of the value of that project is in the mechanical services, in the heating system. But that, again, is not exclusively so. We have a number of our approved contractors who do multiple measures who will also do Heat Pump Plus type projects. These tend to be smaller projects in value and in turnaround time. So contract value in the region of 20 to 30,000. These figures are all exclusive of the VAT, so these would be lower still to the customer with the grant. So 20 to 30,000, and usually these Heat Pump Plus type projects can be turned around in about a week. That's the on-site time, in about a week. Separately, we have consultancy type projects. So these tend to be bigger, more complex projects where there might be extensions being built or major renovation on a property. More often than not, these contracts come to a slightly different route. So it's sometimes these are brought to us by a contractor who he's already engaged on the project. He's building the extension and they want to do energy measures at the same time, but want to be able to avail of the grants. So again, the way we will deal with these is we will work as part of the existing design team. So there may be an existing engineer or architect on that project. There may already be drawings prepared for the extension and the energy retrofit. And we will work with them, reviewing that design, ensuring that they meet all of the energy targets for the scheme and making recommendations where necessary to ensure that they meet those requirements. And we can provide them with the grant offer. So they generally tend to be much larger projects in terms of value, but usually because there's a lot of additional building works. Some of our contractors are interested in doing these kind of works, and some of them just want to focus 100% on the energy retrofit side of things. There is a small number of contractors that we work with who only want to go through the one-stop-shop scheme for their own customers that they are working with. So they tend to be kind of high-end whole house refurbishment or deep refurbishment type builders who will do everything start to finish down to the final details of the house, including painting and decorating. And their involvement with us is to ensure that those customers aren't ruled out of being able to achieve the one-stop-shop grants towards their project, as they are doing all the right energy measures as part of that project. A lot of the questions I get with new contractors is around what the contract and payment arrangement is. So this just tries to kind of explain it in a fairly simple way. Under the one-stop-shop scheme, we're obliged by SCAI to have a straightforward bilateral contract with the customer. So there will be one contract in place between us and the customer, and then we will separately enter into a contract on a project by project basis with you, the contractor. So from a payments and a contractual arrangement point of view, you're effectively our subcontractor, although as the principal contractor on the job, you will still have full control for delivery of that project and your subcontractors on that site. From a payments point of view, the customer pays us and we pay you, the contractor. The customer amount that they pay us is, because we're cash flowing the grant, they pay us the total contract value less the grant. So that makes it easier for them to manage from a cash flow point of view. And then we get the grant amount to make up the difference back directly from SCAI, but you as the contractor get paid the full amount from us. In our case, we don't wait. I think some one-stop shops might work differently, but we're not holding money back on you until we get this money from SCAI. We will pay you the full contract value when the works have been completed and snags have been dealt with and required paperwork is completed. We work on a stage payment basis, so there are, depending on the size of the project, there'll be a number up to three to four payments for the duration of the project, but those smaller, quicker turnaround projects might only be one or two payments. So effectively, you are our subcontractor. RCT does apply. Customer pays us inclusive of that. We pay you exclusive of that as per RCT rules. So that's kind of covering the most of it. If we have time for questions now, Stephen, I can deal with some on that now, and I know there's time for questions later as well.
We have a minute, but I think we can leave the questions to later.
To later. Perfect.
There's a good few questions coming in, which is good to see, and some really interesting questions too. And I'd love to get your take on it, and I'd love to get the other speakers taking it too. So moving on, we have Seamus Hine from TUS. Seamus will be presenting the Digital Academy for Sustainable Built Environment and training available for as well contractors. So with that, Seamus, I'll let you take it away.
Great, thanks very much. Just grab my slides here. So hopefully that's showing for everybody now.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. So great to be here, and thanks for the invitation, Stephen, for the opportunity to present. So I'm the Dean of Flexible and Work-Based Learning within the Technological University of the Shannon. So I'm going to speak primarily around the DASBE project, but I'm also going to touch on some other aspects related to education and skills development in the sector, just so that people are aware of the kind of the full breadth of activity that's out there and the supports that are there for people who wish to upskill. For those that aren't aware, the Technological University of Shannon is a new university formed last year. It arose out of a partnership between Limerick Institute of Technology and Athlone Institute of Technology. We have over 14,000 students across 6 campuses. And next week is actually our graduation week, so we'll have about 3,500 students graduating from the university next week across our various campuses. And you know, I suppose in setting the context for skills development today, I suppose there's a lot of talk about skills, and I suppose it's important to understand what we mean when we talk about skills. Often people think about skills being the work that a craftsperson would do with their hands in terms of installing insulation, putting in air tightness membranes, installing a heat pump, etc. But there are lots of other skills in terms of project management, dealing with complex systems, understanding the use of digital technologies that are involved in retrofit, for example. And we also need to be very clear in terms of who we're targeting with what skills development opportunities we create. And there is a very much difference between skills and knowledge. And we certainly would be fundamentally of the opinion in Ireland, and indeed this is a sense across Europe, that many of the construction workers and the professionals in Ireland have the relevant skills. What we're looking at now is to give them new knowledge to apply those skills in the context of energy retrofit in particular. The other thing to be aware of is that the significant pace of change. Mike spoke about Superhomes starting 6 or 7 years ago when retrofit was in its infancy. We didn't have really robust national policy or programs in place. Technology was in a particular pace in terms of where heat pumps and smart heating controls and other systems were. Everything is changing very rapidly. So it's really important that the education and training we design and develop is robust, but also is flexible to be updated and respond to what the market needs. And one of the critical things, particularly in the context of retrofit, is actually the ability of the people who are involved in the sector to be able to think of the building as a system and integrate the systems. Very different dealing with new build versus retrofit, where that systems approach is often taken at the design stage. With retrofit, you have multiple competing challenges to deal with. And we do have a labour shortage in Ireland. It's very clear, and it's not just in construction, it's across all sectors of society. So how do we deal with that? When's a labour shortage? Typically, people have challenges in releasing staff for training or supporting CPD, continual professional development. And part of that can be recognition of learning from other countries, and that presents its own challenges and opportunities. Like, it's fair to say there's been a huge amount of talk around upskilling in construction sector and built environment for many, many years. Lots of reports out there at a European level, at a national level. The one on the right there is from the expert group for future skills needs, September 2020, looking at the construction sector in general, built environment sector in general. So new builds, retrofit, lots of aspects covered in there. And these reports tell us the challenges. The most recent report, which is really relevant to people today, it's important for me as an educator and someone who develops programs. There was a report done on the skills gaps, in particular related to electric vehicles, renewable energy, and residential retrofit, and what we would need by 2030 to address any gaps that are there. And I suppose I just wanted to highlight a couple of things in there which inform policy development. So you can see on the left-hand side, and without going into all the detail, they looked at the occupations, whether it's a professional engineer, other professions, so legal and planning, construction, niche areas in renewable energy, for example, electric vehicles, and craft and retrofit. So in different areas, and I've just highlighted some words there for people to zone in on without looking at all the text. And again, this report is freely available from EGSFN if you just Google it. So basically what the report is saying, we have enough engineers coming out of our higher education system, but they don't have the relevant knowledge to work in retrofit and work in renewables. So we need to address that by CPD and other activities. There's a shortage of professionals in the non-engineering space, so planning, engineering, legal, and the other aspects. So again, how do we address that? We change the programs we develop and we do more CPD. And then craft and retrofit, I suppose, importantly there, when we're looking at apprenticeships, we have a gap in terms of the numbers of apprenticeships that are graduating from their apprenticeships in the craft space versus the numbers that are taking up the training in the retrofit space. So we need to fix that by fixing the apprenticeships so that they come out skilled or ready to go into retrofit, but also driving uptake for people to take up retrofit occupations, to be able to work with the contractors and work with the one-stop shops. So we need the engineers and the planners and the experts in the one-stop shops to do the design, to do all of that work, the project management. We need the crafts and the construction workers to deliver it on the ground. So some of the things that we've been working on in particular is to look at, what's really the skills gaps, getting money to provide courses to the market, using digital tools. So we have a shortage of people. So how do we get the training to the people rather than the people to the training? How do we collaborate so that we get things done faster across the education and training sector. And we have had a habit in terms of how we develop programs in education space of designing a program and then going out to industry and saying, what do you think? And we do that for every program. So we're trying to move to and test where we define multiple programs and go out to industry and say, what do you think of all of these? And we get them out to the market faster. And as I mentioned, there's lots of activity going on. I'm just going to focus on two particular things: the HP for All project, which is particularly relevant to residential retrofit in Ireland, and the DASBE initiative. And I'll focus predominantly on DASBE, but just to mention HP for All. So HP for All is specifically dedicated at skills development for heat pumps and creating an increased market. It's a European project funded under Horizon Europe, and you can see the partners there. We have partners from Spain, Italy, Austria, and Ireland, and our colleagues, the European Heat Pump Association. And I just wanted to pick out a couple of points that are relevant to the difference when I come back to skills and knowledge. So, for example, on the graph on the left-hand side is a heat pump that was installed in a building, and just all you need to know about the graph is that seeing that sawtooth graph in terms of heat pump means it's cycling on and off. It's not operating, it's not optimized. So we have a heat pump that was installed by a heat pump installer in a retrofit, and the occupant of that building was happy with the energy efficiency and the comfort of that building, but that heat pump was not optimized. So when we go back and do some optimization, we get the graph on the right-hand side, which is an ideal kind of profile that we want to see, where the heat pump comes on, it runs for a period, it gets the house up to temperature, so the set point in that particular room is 21 degrees, and the coefficient of performance of that heat pump is much higher versus that sawtooth profile that we have on the left-hand side. And the difference there is the commissioning and the optimization of the heat pump, not just installing the heat pump, but make sure it's set up to run properly. So skills to install it and knowledge to optimize it. And that has an impact then on the COP. So on the left-hand side, we have a heat pump that is running on a particular heat curve, a particular setup. We're getting the predicted heat pump coefficient of performance is that gray line on the graph on the left-hand side, and we see the actual COP is significantly lower. Up to 50% lower in some circumstances without being optimized. On the right-hand side, we've optimized that heat pump operation, and we're getting COPs matching predicted performance, and we're getting typical COPs of well above 3 in most situations. So again, right skills, installing the system in a good retrofit, but optimizing, using the knowledge to make sure that it's operating properly. So I suppose that's just an example of that education and training impact that we can deliver. So moving on to DASBE then, I suppose DASBE arose out of that earlier graph where I'd shown lots of different logos from lots of different projects that we had been worked on, and the opportunity arose to secure funding excuse me, through the HEA, who had a specific call on the Human Capital Initiative. So ourselves in TUS, working with our colleagues in what was previously Galway Mayo Institute of Technology and now the Atlantic Technological University, industry partners in Tipperary Energy Agency and the Irish Green Building Council, put together a proposal to develop this digital academy for the sustainable built environment. And the rationale was trying to get back to solve the problems I spoke about earlier. Rapidly changing market, getting programs out to the sector as quickly as possible, making them online and digitally available where absolutely relevant, and trying to drive some innovation in how we deliver our programs. And I suppose I've mentioned the partners. So really the ambition is to set up this digital academy. So again, moving programs into the digital online space, so facilitating access as much as possible. Developing up to 40 programs and supporting over 2,000 students through the programs as we deliver on the project. Rapid program design, and then ultimately extending the partnership involved in DASBE beyond the initial subset of partners to involve new industries, new technological universities, and new businesses. And we're trying to tackle the multifaceted aspect. So we're trying to tackle both the energy efficiency agenda, so specifically focus on retrofit, but the emerging challenges of the circular economy. So how can we do these retrofit using materials that are much more efficient from a resource perspective, a carbon perspective? So addressing that circular economy issue, and the digitization agenda, which is rapidly hitting the entire sector. So, and is critical for retrofit. So how can we speed up the process for everybody by digitizing the system? And ultimately, we're also trying to develop programs that have much more variation. So we aim to develop what we call major awards. So for example, master's programs, but right down to bite-sized micro credentials. So 1 or 2 credit modules that people can dip in and out of relevant to their specific needs at a particular time. So I suppose graphically what that means is that, you know, that rapid design process allows us to speed up the process. So higher education might not always be known for innovation and speed. So it can sometimes take us a considerable period to develop a particular program. So we want to speed that up. We want to make sure that we're responding to industry needs, but do that efficiently from an industry perspective. So industry are very busy and they're short-staffed, so they can't. They would prefer if we come to them more efficiently to ask our questions and to prove industry demand. And critically using virtual reality, augmented reality, and other digital tools to drive and create innovative ways of delivering the training. And that's creating our programs, and then they're hosted on our DASBE platform, and that will be launched in the next month, which starting off will signpost people to programs that exist and are hosted on the existing learning platforms within the universities, but moving in the medium term to be able to hosting programs itself, but then also directing people to other activities and other training that may be available in the public and private sector. So what have we achieved in a short space of time? Look, we've developed over 10 new programs, including postgraduate master's programs, micro-credential special purpose awards in the last 18 months, including a specific higher diploma in residential energy retrofit, which was developed within 6 months, which kind of is breakneck speed in a higher education world. We've done a horizon scanning exercise, so we actually have a plan of program development for the next 2 years by looking forward, trying to identify what's needed. We have dedicated staff for resource and program development, which is really, really important, as resources are also constrained within the higher education space. One of the things we've tried to do is actually look at existing content. We have a database of modules across built environment, environmental, IT, digitization. So we're pooling those together, identifying programs that we can generate by putting those modules and building Lego blocks much more efficiently. And I suppose we have a mandate to try and innovate and change. So we try to respond to industry demands, and I'll give you some examples of the things that we're trying to do there. So DASBE.ie is the portal that you can start with. All of the programs available through the partners, both industry, so Tipperary Energy Agency and Irish Green Building Council also have training programs available, non-accredited, that you can access, as well as the programs within TUS and ATU. So really encourage you to go there. A lot of the programs will have started for this academic year, but I'm going to show you some that are starting also in January and September next year, so you can plan your training schedules. And there's information on all the courses also on the relevant websites of the host technological university. So lots of information available in multiple sources. So we have a dedicated page on our TUS website just dedicated to DASBE, and you can register your interest there for those that are interested in particular programs. So, and again, Stephen, I'm assuming these slides will be shared. Like The information on these courses is also available on the DASBE.ie, but you can just see the variety of courses due to start in January. So anybody that's interested can investigate, look whether any of these programs are suitable for you. So for example, as part of our higher diploma in residential retrofit, we have that is designed as 3 different certificates. So you can take the entire higher diploma over a 1-year period, or components of different certificates. So the second certificate component of that is focused on residential energy retrofit systems. So renewable energy heating systems, ventilation, smart buildings. So that might be of interest. You can see we have ones related to BIM, construction capture, data capture, energy engineering. You can see a particular one in heat pump installation in ATU. We have ones in fire safety, higher diplomas in BIM. So a wide variety of programs, again, mixture of blended, part-time, online, face-to-face. So there should be something there that meets your particular requirements. And September of next year, again, we will be restarting our higher diploma in residential energy retrofit that commenced this September. Again, just to highlight the certificate in energy renovation of traditional buildings, I'm going to talk about that just in a moment. And again, you'll see a range of other programs. And I'm pointing out like a higher diploma in virtual design and construction, for example. So using the wide variety of BIM and digital tools available for construction. So this is a photograph of the launch and the start of the certificate in energy renovation of traditional buildings. So this is an example where we worked with industry and specifically the Heritage Council. They had a CPD program looking at energy renovation of traditional buildings that had been run pre-COVID, which we had been involved in design and development. We took that program, put academic credits on it, added an additional module on digital tools for energy renovation. This was the launch. So over 50 students from industry, public sector, architects, engineers, technicians, planners, designers, all specifically focusing on energy renovation of traditional buildings, which have particular characteristics and need particular approaches in terms of energy renovation. So, you know, a particular niche program that's required in the sector. And this is working with industry recently, where we had a number of the professional bodies in, and we are developing virtual reality tools for provision of education and training. And this tool in particular is looking at traditional buildings. So we always have challenges in terms of bringing students into traditional buildings where risks might occur in terms of asbestos, damp, mold, air quality. So now, instead of having to try and overcome all of those challenges, we can do it in a virtual world. The students get to experience that building in a virtual environment and then address particular issues and apply their knowledge and try to develop some identification skills. And I suppose beyond DASBE, there is more. We also are working with the ETBs. So to provide training, we need expert trainers. So we need to upskill the trainers. So we're working with the ETBs through Waterford Wexford ETB to upskill the trainers. So we have a certificate in training in NZEB. So give them the technical knowledge, but also pedagogical knowledge to be able to provide the training to emerging architects, existing or emerging apprentices, existing apprenticeships, craftspeople coming in for CPD training. There are going to be 6 or 7 NZEB Centres of Excellence hosted in the ETBs across the country. A wide range of programs addressing all aspects of retrofit and indeed aspects of new build. They are running programs. They are essentially available in many cases at very reduced cost, or in some cases free. So if you don't know what's out there, you really should contact your local ETB. Come and talk to us in DASBE. We can direct you to training that's available through the ETBs. And this is very much more the hands-on practical craft training. So there is really no excuse for your staff not being able to be upskilled. There's lots of training available. And separately, the industry is also providing their own training. So I mentioned Irish Green Building Council, Construction Industry Federation, equipment and system material suppliers also providing training, usually product or system specific, that you may need to have your relevant warranties, etc., for the delivery of programs. And just finally to mention very briefly a new project that we're starting. So we're knee deep in delivering training at the moment, but we also want to be ready for the future. So in line with lots of other countries across Europe, we've started to plan what's called education and training roadmaps for the built environment in Ireland, so funded through the European LIFE programme. And again, working with the industry partners, IGBC and CIF, but also Laois Offaly ETB, which will be is host to one of the centres of excellence in Mount Lucas in Offaly. So, and the output from that will be a roadmap for education and training provision in the country to 2030 and beyond. And we'll be, I suppose, taking lots of data in and lots of emerging policies. So some of you may be aware that there's new policies coming from Europe that are going above and beyond what already exists in our regulations. It's called the Fit for 55 package. So new targets in terms of energy performance of buildings directive, renewable energy and energy efficiency. So we need to consider how we're addressing those. We have recovery and resilience plans. So lots of changing policy environments, and we have to try and integrate everything from energy efficiency right through across to digitization, embodied carbon, etc. All of these becoming really critical for the sector. And so I suppose that the message is there will be opportunities for new learning and new training constantly going into the future. So I suppose from a contractor's perspective, from people in the sector, it is a constant challenge to upskill and retrain people. However, given the shortages in the market, many people would say, you know, it's much better to invest in training your staff so that you can retain them rather than to lose them. We need to be able to be more responsive and provide that training to you in the sector. So the use of digital and online tools to be able to get that training to the people is really important. Creating alternative delivery modes is really important. That's what DASBE is all about. And I suppose we're investing money. We've sought money from national government. We're delivering that. Contractors and employers also need to consider the value of training. There is a large commitment to education and training from the government via SOLAS, via the HEA, HCI capital funds. So we need to make sure that we encourage as many people to undertake that training as possible and get the value for money. Really expert programs that are available out there for you. We have lots of opportunities for innovation. So what worked previously in the past in terms of education and training might not be the best model. So let's look at new ways of doing that and learn from Europe. And that's what we try to do in TUS, to try and learn from European expertise. And this digital and online forums really allows us to be more creative and foster creativity in what we do. And ultimately, I suppose those that don't take advantage of this education and training won't be in a position to respond to the opportunities and the many the direct focus on investment in retrofit in the country, both for residential and non-residential buildings into the future. So with that, I shall finish. Contact details are there. Obviously, again, I'll provide the slides to Stephen. He can share them widely. Please look at dasbe.ie as a starting point to find education and training that might suit you, or feel free to contact me or any of my colleagues, and we'd be happy to assist with any of your education and training needs. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Seamus. That was brilliant. On time too, that was perfect. Yeah, it's really interesting, the digital aspect of the training too. It's something I think that's really needed, the kind of the removal of the physical world or the physical need to be at a place. So yeah, it's very interesting. There's a couple of questions coming in there. Again, we'll get to them later at the Q&A. I know Mike is answering as many as he can through the chat function. So thanks for that, Mike. We'll move on now to our next speaker, who is Josephine from EHPA. and she'll be presenting the Heat Pump Accelerator that EHPA are currently developing. So with that, Josephine, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you. I'm sharing my screen. I hope you can see it. You should be able to see it. So, okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this event. It's very important for us, the Superhomes project in general, because as Mike already says, we see a bit at European level the Superhomes project as the example, the pilot project in Europe that we are really using when advocating for more one-stop shops around Europe, for legislation, obliging the implementation of one-stop shops throughout Europe. We're always referring to this project as look at what these type of one-stop shops can do and how important they are. So thanks for inviting me. What I will do in this presentation is zoom a bit out and really focus on the space of change that has been mentioned by Seamus and Mike, and also that there will be this continuous need for retrofitting and heat pump installations, really also by the EU level policies that are coming up. So first of all, this is just about the European Heat Pump Association. So European Heat Pump Association is a sector association for heat pumps in Europe. We have 173 members by now. So membership is quickly increasing. And we have not only manufacturers of heat pumps among our members, but also component manufacturers, but more important, also the national associations, also the Irish one, and also research institutes, test labs. So we really have the whole value chain among our members. And I'm Josephine van Beeselare, Head of EU Affairs at the European Heat Pump Association. So by now, heat pumps are mature and used everywhere. I was very happy to see in the chat that someone says heat pumps are already mature today. It's not only a future technology, but it's a technology today. So indeed, that's true. So we see them in commercial applications, residential applications, industrial applications, district heating, and so on. Also in white goods and cars, but that's something that as EHPA we're not focusing on. But what we need to stress even more is the special benefits that heat pumps have, that they can really combine heating and cooling, because that's something that is coming up more and more. And also with the thought of the whole circular economy that was also mentioned before, combining these two functions in one device and in one system is of course also much better at thinking about material efficiency and so on. So we also see that the market really is growing. So if we look at the sales numbers, last year we had 2.2 million heat pump sales. So that's an increase of 34%. We have been growing in the past 10 years, but this 34% increase is really, really big. Now we have a total stock of 17 million heat pumps, and in the sales of last year, so this 2.2 million, that's around 1.9 million heat pumps, and then 0.3 sanitary hot water heat pumps. And if we look at the current pace and also the targets that are set up at EU level, we would achieve or we would need to achieve a doubling of the annual sales already in 2025, so 4.6 million. So you really see the pace of change that was mentioned, and also this continuous need for heat pump installations and retrofitting, that this will not stop. So the heat pump benefits, they are widely recognized by now, not only in the sector itself, but beyond, and also in European policy. Here you see some numbers based on the 17 million heat pumps that are installed, but I won't focus on the numbers, but more on the general aspects. So the fact that heat pumps are renewable, this is really recognized in the Renewable Energy Directive, also that they are efficient in the Energy Efficiency Directive. Also very important is always to mention that if the auxiliary energy, so the driving energy of the heat pump, the electricity becomes greener and greener. And if this is a renewable as well, you have 100% renewable heating system. Also very important to mention is, of course, that there's no combustion taking place at the point of use, so no particulate matter and so on. So all these benefits are more and more recognized, and also the demand response potential, that's a key thing that is coming up as well. And that was also mentioned by the previous speaker with regards to trainings and so on, that really about system integration and flexibility of heat pumps. These topics will indeed come up more and more and require also specific trainings and people with the knowledge about digitalization and connectivity of heat pumps and so on. If we do then look at manufacturing, so we see that there's more than 170 manufacturing sites around Europe. These are often located in quite remote rural areas, so also providing jobs over there. It's quite important to say that this is really also a European industry, so 60% is manufactured in Europe, and that's quite important also in the current discussions where we see that the demand increases, so we need to be sure and ensure that this industry really stays in Europe. That's really key as well. But so I mentioned all the positive developments that are going on, but still, if you see if you put it into perspective, you see that last year heat pump sales were only 21% of the total heater sales. So there's still work to do. We still need to increase the rollout of heat pumps and the work on that one. So it's going very well, but we still have some growth potential. And this growth potential there, 2022, is really, we feel, a tipping point for heat pumps. So as mentioned, we now have a clear recognition of all the benefits of heat pumps. The technology is ready, is trusted, is seen as mature. We also see more and more national targets and policies that prioritize heat pump solutions, and also more and more technology clarity instead of technology neutrality. What do we mean by that? Is that policymakers are more and more expressing clearly that heat pumps are the technology to be used, and rather than only speaking about heating needs to be decarbonized in very general terms, to allow all possible solutions, but now really focusing clearly on heat pumps. So that's really an improvement as well. So at global level, you see that this is also a tipping point year, so to say. Of course, an important event that has also contributed to this is, of course, the invasion of Russia into Ukraine, which has increased the attention towards shifting away from fossil fuels and Russian natural gas in specific. So at global level there, the IEA has published this 10-point plan to reduce the EU's reliance on Russian natural gas. And you see that there's two measures that were really focusing on heat pumps. And there's even more to come. So on the 30th of November, the IEA will publish their first global report on heat pumps. They will look at the potential, at the advantages, also at the current barriers that are still existing and that should be stopped. So this will be quite a major event for our sector, I would say, and will put even more attention on heat pumps as a sector and on the benefits and the need to roll them out at large scale. So we see this at global level, but as mentioned, also many national policies are more and more focusing on phasing out fossil energy boilers. So here you have an overview with a map that is a bit outdated, but at this moment we are updating this map, and also with the new information from the countries that we gathered. So you see there's many bans coming up on oil boilers, on gas boilers, on gas connections, and so on. Very significant is also in Germany that as from the 1st of January 2024, a share of 65% of renewables in heating is needed. So instead of a ban, it's more an increased requirements of renewables in heating. So that's another way of doing it, but we really see increasing phasing out of fossil energy boilers. And also at EU level, a major thing that could come up and that is currently being discussed, it was proposed by the European Commission in May to have by 2029 a ban on standalone fossil fuel boilers being placed on the market via eco-design. But this is at the moment being discussed at the Commission with the different member states, so it remains to be seen how this will turn out. But just so you know that this is an ongoing discussion. And then at EU level, of course, also the EU has reacted to this invasion of Russia into Ukraine and how to cut our dependence on Russian gas. And that was with the Repower EU initiative. So there was a communication that came out in March and then an action plan that came out in May of this year. And there you see for the first time that heat pumps literally are on the front page of the initiative. But also in the initiative, there's very ambitious targets and also quite some measures targeting heat pumps. So the targets that are mentioned in the Repower EU initiative are to double annual sales of heat pumps in the next 5 years to arrive at 10 million hydronic heat pumps. So to arrive at 10 million extra hydronic heat pumps in the next 5 years. But as mentioned, the Commission focuses in these numbers only on hydronic heat pumps, but we as EHPA, we have extrapolated this to our whole data set, also air-to-air heat pumps, because also air-to-air heat pumps are replacing fossil fuel boilers and also they are needed to achieve our energy and climate targets. And then we see, to arrive at 10 million additional heat pumps, we already need to double by 2025. So earlier than the Commission has mentioned. And then they mentioned 30 million by 2030. Well, if we continue the extrapolation, then we see that this has to double again until 2029. But very important for us is indeed that it's really needed to also include air-to-air heat pumps and to not only focus on hydronic heat pumps. The industry has really picked up on it. They are preparing for growth. We see that there's 3.750 million euros of investments announced. And this is based on all of these press releases from these different companies that you see here below. So many manufacturers are building new factories, are transforming production lines from fossil fuel boilers to heat pumps, are adding production lines really to increase their production of heat pumps to meet these ambitious targets. So the industry is ready and is going for it, but of course, only having an increased production is not enough. We need more because these targets are really unprecedented. And that's why we, as a European Heat Pump Association, we propose a heat pump accelerator, or we say that there's really a need for a heat pump accelerator to focus on 5 points to really ensure this large-scale rollout of heat pumps. Because, as I mentioned, there are these ambitious targets in the Repower EU document, and then throughout this Repower EU initiative, there were actually 12 documents. You had quite some measures targeting heat pumps, but there was no overall clear initiative, no overall clear planning on how to reach these ambitious targets. And that's what we think is really needed. So the first point we mentioned is that trust needs to be created in long-term ambition. This sounds a bit fake maybe or blurry, but what we actually mean is that there's need for a true initiative mentioning heat pumps as key technology. For example, you have a solar strategy, you have a battery alliance, you have a hydrogen accelerator at EU level, but you do not have a heat pump accelerator, for example. So we really need to create this trust. And that's not only for consumers in general, but also for the manufacturers, because a lot of manufacturers are still producing both fossil fuel boilers and heat pumps. And as long as we are not clearly seeing from high-level policymakers that heat pumps are the way to go, they will keep betting on two horses, so to say, and we need them to fully also switch to producing heat pumps. A second aspect is, of course, that clean heating must become economically the most attractive. We see still today that both in CapEx and OpEx, that heat pumps are more expensive than fossil fuel boilers. So we need to reduce this by having the subsidy schemes. We also need to shift taxes and levies in many countries that are still much higher on the electricity bill, from the electricity bill to the fossil fuel bill. Also, carbon pricing is very important to really reflect the external costs of heating with fossil fuels. Then a third point is avoid disruption through legislation. Well, what we mean there is that at EU level, really all legislation should go towards this large-scale rollout of heat pumps. And what we now see is, for example, in F-gas regulation and in the eco-design regulation, that you still have a lot of factors that could really slow down this actual rollout because of additional testing, additional requirements on heat pumps that are sometimes more than on fossil fuel boilers. Also on the F-gas regulation that is now, the revision that is now proposed would make it very hard for the heat pump sector, to keep up with the large scale rollout of heat pumps, because there are bans on certain types of refrigerants and heat pumps proposed in 2025 already, for example. So this all needs to be put in perspective with this large scale goal of the Repower EU. A fourth one that is very, very important today and for this webinar is, of course, the focus on skills for the energy transition. And as Seamus already indicated in the presentation before, these skills are really not only only installing, it's much more than that. It's also planning, also people that, for example, municipalities need to be aware about heat pumps, about renewable energy and so on, so they can give the correct advice, also engineering and so on. So with architects, for example, I recently renovated my own house, or not me, but I let it renovate. And also there I can really, tell a lot of stories that, for example, the people at the municipality, when I was calling about subsidies, that they were advising me to put a gas boiler instead of a heat pump, that the architect was not in favor of heat pumps. So you really see that on the ground, there's a lot of work to do there. And there I think the two previous speakers, you're doing an amazing job in really putting this into practice and making sure that all these high level targets that we are talking about at the EU level, that this is really being done also on the ground. So that's really, really, really essential. And the fifth point is, of course, that we need to continue investing in better heat pumps and systems through more R&D and better data. There, one of the key aspects indeed on this R&D is also about interconnectivity, the system integration, both in the house with the other devices in the house, but also with the electricity system in general. And then, of course, plan for the upgrade of the grids so that the grids keep being in line with these large-scale rollout of heat pump targets. So how do we see this accelerator? We do not just see it as a strategy with some measures. No, we see it more really as an initiative where policymakers sit around the table with the whole sector and with all stakeholders involved, and where we really look at what legislation is really needed to prioritize the heat pump market development, to look at how we can really fulfill the energy and climate targets, and also, to exchange really best practices between the different member states. Also, for example, in the Heat Pump for All project there that works on how to improve skills for heat pump installing and so on. So there we can really look at these best practices and also exchange them better with other with other partners and also with other countries. So it's really more than only proposing some measures, but really taking stock also annually of where we are in legislation, where we are in numbers, in heat pump rollout numbers nationally at European level, and what needs to be done to solve the remaining barriers. So so we need not only high ambition and a nice picture on the front of this Repower EU initiative and high numbers, but we really need concrete action. We really need all hands on deck to accelerate this heat pump deployment. And I think, today's webinar is really a good example of this concrete action, what you are doing, both the implementation of one-stop shops, attracting more and more people to these one-stop shops, and also education to develop really all the skills required to roll out heat pumps at large scale. So thank you for your attention. And if you have more questions, this is my email address. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. That was brilliant. We're a little ahead of time, so that's not too bad. I see that Seamus and Mike were answering a couple of questions in the chat there, so thanks for that. There's just one or two that kind of I wouldn't say slipped through the cracks, but I suppose I would say in my mind anyway, I've brought up a good question, and we'll probably finish up a small bit earlier because again we've 25 minutes to spare for Q&A. So if you have any more questions, please continue to use the chat function, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. So there's one there for you, Mike. What is the biggest challenge to achieving 35,000? Is it the lack of contractors who can deliver the standard of the work, or what would you say is the greatest challenge for achieving those targets?
Yeah, certainly contractor capacity is a big challenge, and I guess that's where the likes of the DASBE program and other programs are trying to assist in that. It is the upskilling of the workers in the construction industry, upskilling of the contractors, trying to attract new apprentices into relevant trades that can be applied to retrofit. Availability of energy engineers, retrofit engineers, is also a challenge. We're constantly hiring, constantly looking at the moment, and making good inroads on that, but would like to be able to find more. I guess, like the trades, the issue with retrofit engineer availability as well is that historically, a lot of the courses and training that has been available has been by design or by default almost geared towards new build. And I think that's where a key transition is happening and needs to happen, that you almost treat it as a completely separate channel that you can transfer from one to the other, but the design of the training and the courses is more relevant to retrofit. Most of the engineers that we hire, for example, will come from a varying background. So we have some from architecture, we have some from architectural technicians, we have building services engineers, we have energy engineers, but few, if any, that I can think of have actually come through a course which was retrofit engineer. And the same experience could be applied to contractors as well. Most contractors will have come through from doing new build, or they'll have come through from building extensions, or from being purely an insulation contractor or purely a heating system contractor, as opposed to, you know, a business that we are seeing it more. Certainly, I'm seeing more and more new contractors, as in they've got experience from other backgrounds, but are now focusing on saying, right, I want to be a retrofit contractor as opposed to a building contractor. And we're certainly getting an awful lot more interest in that. It is happening, it is gaining momentum, but definitely the biggest challenge is getting enough, because we all know new build is creating a lot of demand on the industry as well.
That's perfect. Just a comment came through there, and I think it sums it up pretty well as well. New build and retrofit are competing for the same pool of workers, and the political emphasis is on delivering new homes. Again, the housing crisis has kind of pushed more towards new builds for, I would say, the near future, but I wouldn't say till 2030. Would you say, Mike? Or
they are definitely competing, and I think in a way that's why, to some extent, a separation of the two might be a good idea, that you have retrofit trained people coming through, separate from new build trained people coming through. It doesn't necessarily create more people, but at least it creates a more defined split in those rules. I guess that the housing shortage problem, it's probably always been a problem. It's particularly acute at the moment. How soon how easy that will be resolved is yet to be seen. However, one thing that I do think is that with, I suppose, rising living costs, inflation, rising energy costs, we are seeing that a lot of people who are looking at building new are holding back and waiting. So there seems to be signs of a slight kind of reluctance. I won't say slowdown, but reluctance among some people looking at new builds, not necessarily the big developments, but people building one-offs and so on. Whereas they're more inclined now to say, well, let's look at what we have and what can we do with that and retrofit that to make it into the house we want. I think the support of the 8 billion to 2030 in grants will, I think, give an awful lot more confidence to retrofit contractors. Whereas if your business is 100% new build, you're probably more likely to get a little bit more nervous over the next number of years.
I might just comment on that, Mike and Stephen. I suppose if we come, and it is a very, very, very valid point in terms of the pool of workers. If we compare back to 2006, for example, where we were at the height of new build construction, there was very limited, if any, retrofit activity at that time, and also across Europe there was less construction activity and less focus on retrofit. So we had much more mobility of construction workers across Europe, and Ireland benefited from construction workers coming from other countries in Europe to work in the construction sector. That is not as much the case now. So there is reasonable economic development in lots of other European countries, a big focus. There are housing shortages in other parts of Europe, and there is also a push on retrofit. So we have less mobility of workers, professionals, engineers across Europe. So in general, we do have a challenge there. I would say that in terms of the pools of workers and where new build is going, and you can certainly see it in terms of research and also investment in a new construction technology sector, to address the housing shortage in particular, we will not address that using our the speed of construction will not be solved using traditional construction methods. We need to move to off-site manufacturing, much more efficient manufacturing to deliver multiple houses at the scale that we need. So that is going to evolve, which will change the role of the construction worker and the professional and designer also. So I think there's a lot of moving parts. But in the short term, it is going to be down to making the retrofit business an attractive space for people, professionals, engineers, designers, and construction workers and contractors to work in. So that needs the stability, it needs clear market access. And I think the other thing to speed up, to answer the additional question, we need to now bring products onto the market which enable people to finance their retrofits, because that's the next part of the jigsaw that needs to be provided.
Yeah, I perfectly agree with it. Yeah, and that kind of leads on to another question. There was a comment in the chat that that people were keen to learn about training that was happening on site for let's say for learning of installers and workers as well. Seamus, with the DASBE project, have you seen anything when it comes to, let's say, the working and learning dichotomy or behavior of installers and the likes, that there is more of an approach to work rather than to actual learning? And what would you do to, let's say, combat that issue? Would you use a carrot or a stick approach to kind of increase upskilling?
Well, I'll use the statement that one of my colleagues that I work across in Europe says: we need the carrot, the stick, and the tambourine, or in Ireland's case, it can be the boweron or whatever we want to call it. So the carrot is incentivized training directly through the contractors, free training, subsidized. So a lot of the DASBE programs are heavily subsidized, so between 30 and 50% reduction on fees for those programs. So there's lots of carrots out there. I think in terms of sticks, we have to increase the the requirements for people to have the knowledge in terms of the systems that have been installed, because they are more complicated, they are more need additional knowledge and skills. So whether that's at the professional or the crafts level, so that is happening through the building regulations and happening through other regulations. So that, and the one-stop shop regulations and the requirements to meet with warranties, etc., that is coming. So we do have sticks, but we need to continue this communication piece to show the value of upskilling and the requirement for upskilling. And this is, I suppose, retrofit is a relatively new market in Ireland. Anybody that looks at business and market development will know that you get the early adapters, they're at the start, they're the top 20%. You get the laggards, which are at the end, they're the last 20%. Now we're at the people in the middle. So we have a lot of people who have started to take up training and are focusing on training. Now we need to focus on the people that are reluctant, unable, don't appreciate, don't understand the value of the training and the upskilling, and to do that as efficiently and engagement as possible. So that's the space we're in now, is that middle ground, that middle hump, and that's where all the effort, money and resources have to be put into to get over that barrier.
Agreed. If I can add there as well, the way that we work with a lot of our contractors as well is, so you might call it informal training, in that when we're carrying out our visits to construction sites, we're talking to those contractors all the time. We're giving them guidance on how to address certain issues, and the truth is we learn from some of those contractors as well, and you know, certain tips on ways to address certain tricky situations, which you get in every retrofit, and the ability to share and pass that on then to other contractors helps them to kind of grow and develop in the way that the retrofit, that we like to see the retrofit done. So it's not formal training, but they do learn from it, and our engineers learn from the contractors as well. It is a two-way thing.
That's perfect. And just one question for Josephine, and I think we can, the questions have kind of stopped coming through now, so we can leave it at that then. Josephine, has there been an uptake in one-stop shops in Europe from the view of the European Heat Pump Association?
That's, for me, that's difficult to say, but what we can say is that in the European legislation, and that is now being discussed in the Fit for 55 package, both in the Renewable Energy Directive and in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, there are articles taking up that member states need to implement one-stop shops. So yes, it's being pushed from EU level, but to have a clear map of really where they are at the moment, that's actually a good exercise that we maybe should do. Ask our national associations in which member states that one-stop shops have been taking up and are working well. So yeah. I would just actually maybe would like to react to one person here that says new build can exploit off-site industrialization, retrofit cannot. We had our heat pump forum at the end of September, and there one of the speakers was also from the Energiesprong business model, so to say, and they are actually doing this industrialization, industrialized retrofitting. What do? Is they produce one type of unit, including heat pump, ventilation, the how do you call that, I do not know the English word, the part of the PV system that transfers
the inverter.
Yeah, inverter, exactly, that's the word. So all in one type of unit, and then they produce that at large scale and retrofit like that. Whole streets of houses. Of course, the houses need to have the same type of look and size, but for example, this started in the Netherlands, and there you have a lot of streets that have all of the houses that look exactly the same. So this can be done, and now it's also starting in the UK and in several other countries. So I wouldn't say that this is only for new buildings, but can also be done for retrofitting.
That's perfect.
I just comment overall on the one-stop shops. The European Commission have supported lots of one-stop shops across Europe through research and development, grant aid. There was a paper done by colleagues in Europe, which I will get access to, which shows the range of one-stop shop models that have evolved across Europe. Ireland has a particular socio-economic and legislative framework where a set of one-stop shops can evolve. That's different in other countries. So I'll dig out that paper, Stephen, and send you the link, and you can circulate it.
That's perfect. Yeah. We have one question. I would say it's a statement more than anything, but just to kind of get your opinion on it. They say it's critical to tackle the accidental release of F-gases. Now, I know there is F-gas regulations coming in where reduced global warming potential is a main factor of newly what they call virgin refrigerants. Just to get your opinion on this, we've got it a couple of times in a couple of other webinars, as well as the accidental release of F-gas. Is it something that happens a lot, or is it, in your opinion, is it something that we don't really need to be worrying about?
Oh, well, we for sure need to make sure that it happens as least as possible. So what we are currently also doing in the revision of the F-gas regulation is to really try to have a sort of track and trace system to really try to minimize these leaks. Of course there are, but we need to minimize them as much as possible. And as a sector, we also want to work towards that together with the European Commission to really try to follow from start until the end where all the F-gases are going, and make sure that the leaks are really detected and that are not going, how do you say, undetected. So that's something that we're focusing on. Yes.
And from your point of view, Mike, have you seen many, let's say, I know not from your own cases, but if you ever had any call outs where there was a problem with, let's say, F-gas leaking or any such?
Not to date, thankfully, and hopefully won't. But it's not something that we have encountered across whatever number of hundreds of houses we've done over the last 6-7 years. I would imagine. Look, obviously it's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be controlled, but I think it is a relatively rare occurrence from my experience.
That's perfect. Yeah. Hope that's answered some people's questions in the chat there. So with that, and if anyone doesn't have any more questions, that looks like we're okay. Ahead of schedule, 20 minutes ahead of schedule. I'd just like to thank all 3 speakers today, Mike, Josephine, and Seamus. It was a pleasure to get your input today, and very interesting topics as well, including the training, the one-stop shop models, and also the heat pump accelerator that's in the works. So I'd like to thank also everyone that joined us today, and the recording will be available on the Superhomes website, if I'm not mistaken, and the slides and any additional resources that were mentioned today will be shared amongst the registrator, or people that have registered for the event as well. So again, thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a good evening.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen. Take care, everyone.